The Bengals front office made a ton of moves yesterday, and yes, we're back. We're going to talk about it here on No Buts About It. What's up, guys? It is Josh Butts here from No Buts About It. Please remember to hit that subscribe button real quick. It really helps us out, and like this video. But today, we're going to talk about some moves that the Bengals made yesterday. We're not going to talk about all the moves. The Bengals made quite a few over the weekend. So here are some of the moves we aren't going to talk about as much. They signed defensive tackle McTelvin Agim, who played for the Colts most recently, and then they waived guard to Sean Manning. So again, those did happen, but we're not really going to talk about them as much today. I think this video is already going to be long enough, and if we go into every single move, it's just going to be even longer. Some other moves that they made, they got Demetrius Knight Jr. signed, second-round pick. You guys know I'm a huge fan of this pick. When I did the Bengals grade video, he was a big guy that I really liked that they picked up. So glad to get him signed. And what's interesting is they actually got the language that they've been trying to get into Shamar Stewart's contract, who still remains unsigned. They got that language into Demetrius Knight Jr.'s contract, but I believe the report said they had to kind of negotiate with him with 75% guarantees and stuff like that. So it'll be interesting to see how that affects the Shamar Stewart negotiations as well. I have reached out to Shamar's agent and have been trying to set up an interview time. We'll see how that goes as well. But just to keep you guys in the loop, I am trying to gather as much information as possible. Finally, another move that the Bengals did not make was the Trey Hendrickson extension. We're going to have to continue to wait for that. But we're going to look at the positive. Let's look at what we've got so far. So the Bengals brought in center Andrew Rame. And so he got signed, undrafted free agent, not an undrafted free agent, but he was a free agent. He played for the Carolina Panthers. He played exactly one game with them. So not a huge signing. However, I do think that it needs to be talked about because we are looking at Matt Lee and Ted Karras as well here, as well as the Bengals having Seth McLaughlin, who is recovering from injury. So I've seen a lot of people talking about the potential here of what the Bengals could do. There's been a lot of talk, and this isn't a new thing. It's been talked about for a few years, of moving Ted Karras from center to guard because he has experience there. However, I am not moving Ted Karras from center to guard because he touches the ball as much, if not more, than Joe Burrow. He's probably the only player on the team who touches the ball more than Joe Burrow. And he has chemistry with Burrow, and I don't see any reason to mess with that. So we aren't going to be doing that this season. However, we do have a really good interior offensive lineman who has just been sitting on the bench. And a lot of fans really like this guy. It's Matt Lee. Matt Lee was taken in the 7th round last season, and part of the reason he was taken in the 7th round was because he's a great center, but he doesn't offer a ton of versatility. He stands at 6'4", 310 pounds. So if you can get that big of a guy at center and move him over to guard, that would be huge for his depth and versatility. We already know that he's good at center. A ton of fans want to see him at center, but if we can get him at guard, that is where the positional competition is needed. We need guys brought in. Yes, they drafted Jalen Rivers. Yes, they got Dylan Fairchild. Yes, they brought in Lucas Patrick. But let's be honest, fans still want to see a competition at guard. They don't want it to just be handed to someone. If we add in Matt Lee to that competition, that just raises the ceiling for what we have, and it takes the floor up with it, in my opinion. I would really like to see Lee kind of get some snaps at guard. He got a few last season at practice, at least according to reports, but I would like to see that more, especially when Seth McLaughlin comes back. Ohio State guy, Bengals fans, a lot of them are Ohio State fans. A lot of fans really like Seth McLaughlin too. So he tore his Achilles. He's expected to return sometime this season. He's probably going to end up being a really good center. I haven't looked at him a ton. I'm planning on it as we get into preseason here, but I think that he could compete with Lee for that center two position behind Karras. So let's get all of our best guys on the team and move Lee over to guard and then offer him that versatility and that depth. Rame isn't super experienced. He's not going to, change the world with what he brings to the Bengals. Like I said, he only appeared in one game in 2024 for the Panthers. Maybe Scott Peters finds some untapped potential here, but I think currently the team is banking on McLaughlin and Lee at center for the future once Karras retires, and then having one of them at guard as well, which I'm a big fan of if one of them can transition, most likely Matt Lee. I wouldn't be surprised at all if ultimately on the depth chart we end up seeing Ted Karras center one, then we see Matt Lee get kicked to guard with Seth McLaughlin at center two. But let me know what you think. What do you think the Bengals should do with their interior offensive linemen guys down below? We're going to move on to another move that the Bengals made that I don't think is going to be super pertinent, and it's not going to be super obvious on game day, but I do think it could have an effect on the team, and that's why we're going to discuss it. The Bengals brought in Desmond Ridder, and Desmond Ridder was part of a very lackluster quarterback class. If you remember, Kenny Pickett, Malik Willis, Brock Purdy, who was the final pick of that draft, ended up being the best quarterback out of that class. So, started for the Falcons for, I think, a season and a half maybe before getting cut. He ended up going to Arizona as a backup and then to Las Vegas. Just not really doing too much. But you know what? The Bengals aren't bringing him in to be a lot. His signing resulted in the release of Logan Woodside, which, if you're not familiar with Logan Woodside, he was drafted in the 7th round of the 2018 draft by the Bengals, then went to Tennessee, then went to Atlanta, and then came back to Cincinnati. So he's been the practice squad quarterback essentially, as Jake Browning has locked down that backup role. And that's what Desmond Ridder is going to be. He's going to be the practice squad quarterback. Assuming he doesn't lose out to Peyton Thorne, who's an undrafted free agent, I do think that Ridder should beat out Thorne for that position, but I guess we'll see. Ridder also has that history in Cincinnati, having gone to the University of Cincinnati. So he knows the town, he knows the fans, he's very familiar with that. And the Bengals did actually, to their credit, look at other quarterbacks. Tyler Snoop Huntley. Most fans know him as a Ravens backup, but he did last play for the Dolphins, so that's why I've got that photo there. But they looked at him as well, ended up going with Ridder instead. My hope here is that he's just one of those quiet improvements. Obviously, we don't want to see the practice squad quarterback on game day because that means we have a ton of injuries. But I do think that he can help the secondary improve. He is a former starter in the league. No matter which way you put it, he was at one point playing against first string defenses in the NFL. And he has played in games the last few seasons as well. So it's not like we're just pulling a guy who hasn't seen a football field in 2 seasons, 3 seasons. No, he has played in regular season football games against first string defenses. So I think that he can help out the Bengals defense, which needs improvement a ton. We all know that. So I'm hoping that he's able to challenge them more and just ultimately help lift up that secondary that is still very young and just needs to kind of gel and get some confidence potentially. Biggest move of the day, in my opinion, here that we're moving on to is the Bengals signing Taven Bryan. Now, Taven Bryan is not a huge name at all. I wouldn't say that most casual fan would know who he is. And that's fine. That tends to happen with the D line. And I don't think that he's a huge move, but I do think he fills a huge need. And that is interior defensive line pass rush depth, because the Bengals have zilch. They have zero depth when it comes to interior defensive line pass rush. So even if we assume Shamar Stewart gets signed, and he can be used over the top, kind of how the Bengals like to use Sam Hubbard at times, and Hendrickson gets signed to apply that pressure. Interior defensive line was still awful last year when it came to the pass rush. McKinley Jackson and Chris Jenkins both were shown flashes of it. We saw it a little bit, but they're both run defenders primarily. And I really like both those guys. I don't think I've ever said a bad thing about them on this channel, other than when they were maybe a little, just missing tackles. But I've always really liked them as prospects, and I still do like them as prospects. But just their game is pretty much just run defense. And so they need to improve in the pass rush. Hopefully, they are able to get with Jerry Montgomery, figure that out, and make those flashes more, well known during games. The Bengals did sign TJ Slayton in free agency, but again, he's a pure run defender. We have that. We need pass rush. And BJ Hill was really the only guy who could do that, but he got hurt at times. And then when he got hurt, it was just Trey Hendrickson, pretty much, which isn't great. So bringing in Taven Bryan, a former first-round pick for the Jacksonville Jaguars. He was drafted in 2018, first round, had 6.5 sacks in 4 seasons with the Jaguars. So not huge numbers, but, he can get to the quarterback occasionally. He ended up starting in 16 games for the Browns in 2022, and he played in every single game for the Colts in the last 2 seasons, playing just under 30% of snaps in both seasons. So he's not a starter, and we don't need him to be a starter right now. Because, again, we're looking at BJ Hill. We're looking at McKinley Jackson. We're looking at Chris Jenkins. McKinley and Chris are the future of this team, hopefully. But we need someone to help develop them. And, you might be thinking, well, what about McTelvin Agim? You said that the Bengals signed him at the beginning, and we weren't going to talk about it a little bit. Yeah, you're right. But he has played in 1 game since 2021. He was a former 3rd-round pick, I think, for the Broncos. So the potential for Taven is just higher than it is for McTelvin overall. Ultimately, my goal for Taven Bryan isn't to be some overachiever, oh, this is why he was a first-round pick. No, ultimately, I just want him to be depth that provides pass rush when he is called upon. I also hope that he's able to help the younger guys like McKinley Jackson, like Chris Jenkins. These guys, they've been good. They have had flashes on this team. People like them. They just need help. They just need the ability to learn. And I'm hoping that with this veteran coming in, it helps them to kind of get that confidence in the pass rush game and just, be the future that we want them to be. Obviously, if he comes into practice and is just, killing it and he becomes a starter, that's even better because you got him on a cheap deal. I don't see that happening. But ultimately, I think that he can be a good veteran coach for the younger guys, and he provides depth as well. Ultimately, everything we've talked about has been depth. We've said the word depth a lot today, and these aren't super flashy moves. However, it's been a rough offseason for Bengals fans, and ultimately, it's nice to see the normally apathetic front office do something. They're trying, whether it's too late or not. You can make that argument. It's not the big signings we want to see. We want to see that Trey Hendrickson and Shamar Stewart signing get done, but they aren't completely sitting on their hands right now. I would love for them to sign Hendrickson and Stewart here in the next few days ahead of training camp. I'm a fan of bringing back Hilton because, he might not be great in man-to-man anymore, but Mike Hilton was a great blitzer. And like I said, that pass rush, we need it. Bring him back and just have him in on blitz packages. And, the Seahawks released Noah Fant yesterday. Kick the tires on that because Bengals don't have a great tight end room right now. Mike Gesicki 3-year deal, but he's ultimately a wide receiver as well. Eric All is out for the season, most likely. Cam Grandy's pretty much a blocking tight end. Not truly. He can catch occasionally. And then Drew Sample isn't. He's pretty much just a blocker as well. Tanner Hudson's older, and I know people have mixed emotions on him. So bringing in Noah Fant would be a nice, move in my opinion to maybe get a cheap tight end who can be another weapon for Joe Burrow. But let me know what you think down below. Like I said, we plan to be back. We'll be doing a full show, hopefully Wednesday, July 30th, ahead of the first preseason game. And we're going to try to consistently record on Wednesdays this season. Our goal this year is to get monetized, and we appreciate any help you give us. And that includes comments, and subscribes. Until next time, go do something nice for someone.